Welcome to tonight's ZBA meeting for the town of Hanson, May 11th, 2021. Tonight's agenda is as follows. At 7 p.m. we have Brian Reese at 270 High Street. And at 7:15 p.m. we have Egan Development. We're going to start off with Brian Reese again, 270 High Street. I'm going to read his hearing notice into the record. The Hanson Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on May 11th, 2021 at 7 p.m. online via video conference on the application of Brian Reese for a special permit on the town of Hanson zoning bylaws, section 6B6D, to allow for an apartment to be built in the existing structure at 270 High Street, map 49, lot 29, Hanson's assessors map. Property is located in the Residence A zone. I think we have a letter here from the building inspector, Robert Curran. He says, I have seen and reviewed the petition of Brian Reese for a special permit. This office has no objections to the proposal. However, a building permit shall be required prior to the start of construction. All right, so we have here, I just want to, Brian Reese, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Brian.
Yes.
All right, I added you as an attendee. Sorry, this is our first night doing Zoom, so bear with us.
I'm new to this too.
All right. So basically, I have your application in front of us for 270 High Street. You explain to the board what you're trying to do?
I'm just trying to put an accessory apartment in the house. Just that's basically it. I'm gonna build it into the basement, the existing basement.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm gonna excavate an egress, an entrance in the rear, and I'm gonna put a safety egress in the front.
Okay. I'm gonna try to let me see if I can do a split screen on this. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna try to put your document on our page so any abutters can see it if anybody's on in regards to this. Give me 1 second, Brian.
Sure.
Hold on for 1 second. All right. All right, so Brian, while I'm looking to try to do this, I'm trying to do a split screen in this, but I'm not getting the same split screen as I was getting earlier for some reason. In any case, so what I'm looking at right now is so can you describe what exactly you're doing in the basement? You say another apartment, right? So what are you doing? Are you doing bedrooms? How many bedrooms are you doing? Like what exactly are you doing, trying to do?
It's basically a studio apartment. I'm gonna have one bedroom.
One bedroom.
Very small apartment, very small.
Okay. So 1 bedroom apartment. And what so obviously the rest of the dwelling, how many bedrooms does the rest of the house have? 6?
No, it has 4.
So the main house has 4. You're trying to add 1 additional bedroom, which would make 5?
Yes.
Okay. And it's going to consist of what? A kitchen, bathroom, open to a living room / bedroom, studio?
A living room, and then there will be a separate bedroom.
So it won't be a studio, it'll be a 1 bedroom?
Yes, it's a 1 bedroom. It's very small 1 bedroom, yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at your plans here and I don't, I'm just having, where's the bedrooms pertaining to your plans? Like,
Okay, if you're looking at the plan, I don't know if you have the one that shows the entire basement or the close-up, but if you're looking at the close-up of the apartment,
yeah,
that shows stairs, it's the egress, it's the entrance into the kitchenette area.
so I'm gonna put this right here. Can you see that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So go
So
ahead.
down low at the bottom of your screen, you can see there's a door that opens, there's stairs and a door that opens into a kitchenette area on the left, and a bathroom will be on the right. And if you walk through there, there's a little living area, and then just beyond that, there's a divider into a bedroom. And
Understood.
out through the bedroom, there'll be an egress window.
Okay, so if I'm looking at this plan here, this is what you're saying the bedroom is going to be right here?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
it's got a slot pocket door,
Yep, it's got a pocket door, yes.
and then your
And a
second,
closet on the end there. Yep,
means of egress is by window?
yes.
All right, so. So, Brian, Mr. Reese, was there anything else that you wanted to say in regards to the application?
No, just as long as they know that I do everything to code. I mean, I am a licensed contractor.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know what else I can say.
Okay, are there any abutters here, in regards to this application? And if they are, can you, raise your hands? I see, Paul and Nicole Riley. I'm going to, allow Paul and Nicole Riley to talk. If you could just state, Paul and Nicole, if you could just state your name and address for the record, it'd be greatly appreciated. Go ahead. I'm gonna move you to, sorry,
I think I just unmute. Yeah, we're live now.
you're live. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's Paul at 300 High Street. The only question I had is what you were doing as far as if you were going to be staying there, if you were just dividing it up and then making an apartment buildings. That's the only reason why I had a question about it.
No, I live here on my own and I plan on staying.
So you're just making an apartment for you to
Yes.
rent at the bottom.
Yep.
That's
We
fine.
understand.
No, that's cool. That was my only question.
We didn't know if you were turning it into an apartment building.
No, it's a pretty big place and I just,
Yeah, no, I hear you.
I thought maybe it'd be better if I had at least someone else in here. It's a lot of space
Absolutely.
for one guy.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
I guess I'll lower my hand now. Is that what it?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Was there anyone else here on behalf of this application? So I see here Joe and Sarah McTurnan. Go ahead.
Yes, I actually, no, we actually just wanted to make sure, basically what the last people had asked. We're at 271. We're directly across the street from the property. And we were wondering the same questions that was just previously asked. So we don't see any problem with that either.
Okay, excellent. And again, what was your address again for the record?
271 High Street.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alyssa Kitchen, can you please state your name and address for the record, please? Alyssa?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you state your name and address for the record?
Sure. It's Alyssa Kitchen and I'm at 284
Okay.
High Street.
Okay, so Alyssa, I got an email from you earlier today, am I correct?
Yes, yeah, and similar to my neighbors, my question, because the wording in the letter was pretty vague, and again, I just saw it for the first time today,
Mhm.
to make sure that this isn't an apartment, complex going in. It sounds much different than what I initially understood by the letter, but I also just wanted to point for the record that we weren't notified at all. We didn't get any notice on this, which is why I had emailed you.
Okay, so in regards to that, so you bought it off Laura Brown, am I correct?
Yes, March 30th is when we closed.
Yeah, so what happened was, so the applicant goes to the assessor's office, gets a certified abutters list, and the abutters office only goes by the most recent information they have. So the assessor's office gives them a certified abutters list with the names that they have on record. At the time, the application was submitted and the abutters were notified, it was sent to Laura Brown at 800 Hingham Street. So she must have got your notice. So I apologize for that. But again, the assessor's office only goes by the most current information that they have, and we only go by what the assessor's office tells us.
Okay, I appreciate that. The other thing I would just point out is that it sounds like I might not have been the only one that wasn't properly, that didn't get that notice. So just, and again, that's more of just an FYI on your end, for however that process typically works, that it didn't seem to go through as is typical, I guess, in this
Yeah.
case, just again, as an FYI.
Yeah, and the only other thing is, just so you know, so it's, the radius is 300 feet with a ZBA. So it's anything within 300 feet. So if you have 304 feet or 302 feet, you wouldn't get notified. Just FYI also, just. a little
I
better.
read that too. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Alyssa,
Oh, nope, sorry. I'm good. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for submitting your comments. Appreciate it. Barry Crimmins? Mr. Crimmins, are you here on this application?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. No, Mr. Chairman, I'm here for the next matter.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep, no problem.
Anybody else in regards to this application? Any abutters? Can you please raise your hand? And by raising your hand at the bottom of a bar at the bottom of the screen, there's a raise hand button. If you just click on that, I could actually see that you're trying to speak. All right, I don't see anybody else trying to speak. Board members, I'm gonna go through the board members. I'll start off with Mr. Perkins. Let me see.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, Mr. Perkins, do you have anything to comment in regards to this application?
I do. So this is in a Residence A district, correct? That's what we
Yes, it
determined.
is. Yes, it is.
Okay. So what subsection are we actually applying for? Is this under a special permit, or what are we looking to do here? As far as the classification of what you're applying for?
Yeah, so from what I understand, it's for the notice, Kev, is for a special permit.
Mhm.
It's under section 6B6. So I got the zoning book in front of me. And let me see here. It says uses permitted by special permit. And then it talks about
I don't believe we have anything in there for an accessory apartment.
so the section that I'm looking at under 6, so it's 6B6, right? So under 6B6,
Yep.
D actually,
Okay.
it talks about conversion of a single-family dwelling existing at the time of the adoption of zoning town of Hanson to a two-family structure, provided that the exterior appearance of the structure is not altered, and the lot on which the structure is located contains at least 40,000 square feet. So do you have an objection to the application under section 6B6D?
Well, I have a question as to, all right, so the requirement is conversion of a single family dwelling existing at the time of adoption of zoning, which was what, 1952?
In that range, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so that's my question is, so when was this built and was it a single family dwelling? Because my understanding it was an accessory structure to the old hospital. And that was a newly created lot, not a lot that, predated zoning.
Okay, Mr. Reese, do you want to respond to that? I'm just looking for your name. I have you as a panelist. Let me see. Sorry. One second. Mr. Reese, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Did you want to respond to that?
I know that, from what I understand, it was built in 1920, and from what I was told, that this was the doctor and his family's residence. This was a single family residence for him and his family, and they worked at the hospital. That was my understanding. And I mean, I have 40,000 square feet, and I put in a 6-bedroom septic.
Okay. Kevin?
So this structure was on that single parcel that was all, it was essentially a secondary structure, an accessory structure on that parcel to go with the hospital. It was part of the hospital, correct? It was never a separate lot. It was subdivided off when it was purchased years ago.
Are you asking me?
Yes.
I don't know when it was purchased years ago. I just bought it 1 year ago.
Right. So I guess for me to make a comfortable decision, we'd have to see the history of the structure, where it originated from, and if it was in fact a single family dwelling that predated zoning. Because I always thought that that was an accessory structure to the hospital and the rest of the property there.
So as an accessory structure, I mean, are you familiar with the story about the doctor that lived here and his family, Dr. Streeter?
I'm familiar with the property, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I was just told that the doctor and his family lived here. We saw the hash marks in the cellar door for the kids growing up and stuff. I mean, as far as I understand, it's a single family, but I can't argue the point. I don't know if you mean if it was built isolated, separate on its own, or if it was part of the hospital. I know that he worked at the hospital, and this is clearly by the structure built by the same people who built the hospital and what's now the food pantry.
Yeah, I believe you that it's an old structure. That I don't question. My concern is that it was in fact a separate, it was a single family dwelling, a detached single family dwelling on a separate lot. Because if it was on a common property, then it wouldn't have been, it would have been something had to have been the primary use in the primary structure, which in my opinion would have been the hospital, and this would be a secondary structure. So I guess the question is, when was that lot that is sitting on, when was that actually created? Was that part of a larger parcel that was cut off?
I bought this from Laura Brown as well. We're talking to the neighbor that was just here.
Sure.
I guess they bought it from the town, and I bought it from them.
All right. So just to clarify, I think basically what he's asking is, and I'm not sure, Brian, if you, he's basically saying that the principal use, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, was in the hospital. The residence was an accessory use used by maybe the doctors. And your concern is, reading into the section of our bylaw, is that it wasn't the primary use. The primary use wasn't residential, and it was created before or after zoning was enacted. Is that your position?
My question is, was it a single family dwelling? Just because someone lived there doesn't mean that it was a single family dwelling. It was, a secondary. That's my concern, is that it was possibly a secondary structure and an accessory building to the hospital.
But what is it? But what I'm applying under, what does that read? Could you read that again? It says, to convert.
60, conversion of a single family dwelling existing at the time of adoption of the zoning bylaws in the town of Hanson, and converting it to a two-family structure. So was that a single family dwelling?
Yeah.
Prior to 1952? That's the
I
question. So
Okay.
if you can do some homework on that and
Sure.
just make me happy with that, then
Okay.
that's the only concern I see. Just because if we don't meet this requirement, every single person in Hanson could come in and say, if he's not meeting it, why do I have to meet it? That's my
I get you.
concern.
So it's at the time of the adoption. When was that? Did you say 1952?
We could get you an exact date, but I believe it was 1952. So what was that structure considered in 1952 and the time to follow after that, up to current date? Just because there was a family living in there, in my opinion, that it wasn't a standalone, single family dwelling on a separate lot. That's my concern, that it was essentially an outbuilding, an accessory building on the same parcel, along with the hospital and the other outbuildings.
Okay. And could you maybe point me in a direction like where I might even start to look for those answers?
I mean, that's probably something, maybe you have your attorney dig up old deeds or anything. I mean, I don't know when that lot was created, if it was created recently, if it was always on a separate, if it was always on a separate lot, then I'd say yes, it's a single family dwelling on a separate lot. But if it was always on a common lot, then I think we really need to go into history of what that building was and what the use was. Just that's real important to make sure that we dot our i's and cross our t's with the requirements of this subsection that you're applying under.
Okay.
And let me, Mr. Reese, let me add one thing, that the zoning was enacted in the town of Hanson in 1956. So you'd want to go back to at least then, and I guess it's a two-part question. I guess the first part is, when was the law created, right? Kev, is that your first question?
That would be one of the questions, yes, that I think we need to get some more information on, absolutely.
And then the second part was it actually a dwelling prior to 1956 on that lot?
What was the use of that structure? And yeah, I guess what was the use of that structure
Okay.
at that time?
All right, Mr. Reese and Mr. Perkins, give me 1 second. I have a few abutters here that want to speak. I think Alyssa wanted to comment. I'm gonna bring her in. Alyssa?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the only question I had in listening to this was when Mr. Reese was describing the apartment, putting it in the basement floor as an accessory apartment, forgive me, not only am I new to town, I'm also very new to zoning and bylaws. I know not a whole lot about it, but from what I was hearing when you're referencing a code to convert a home into a 2-family unit. So are those two separate zoning bylaws, one for an accessory apartment within the structure, and then 2 to convert it to a 2-family dwelling? Because that to me is pretty big distinction.
So your question, Alyssa, are there 2 sections of so the one that he's applying for is a section in our bylaw that basically, it's section 6B6D, right? So section 6B, subparagraph 6D. And basically what he's applying under, if you had a single family residence in the town of Hanson and it was built prior to our zoning was enacted, and you wanted to convert that from a 1 to 2 family, as long as you didn't change the exterior elements and kept it within the structure, you are allowed to do that by special permit. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So really this would be converting, so the request is really to convert it to a 2-family. The reason I ask is the way that I think of that is like, if a 2-family dwelling is like a standalone, you could sell one half of it and keep the other. And so that's, which to me is different than an accessory apartment within the structure as like an in-law type or accessory apartment in the basement that you would rent out as an owner.
So we have a separate provision in our bylaw which allows in-laws, but that is not the section that he's applying for under special permit. He is applying for an apartment, which would be entirely separate of the main structure, which would make it a 2-family. Now, whether he could, of course he could condoize it and sell it off. I don't know if that's his intent. But regardless, I understand your point.
Okay, thank you. That was just clarification on my end of kind of what it would look like. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Reese, can you just, Mr. Reese,
Go ahead.
when you're not speaking, can you just mute your microphone? So,
Yes, yep.
noise. Go ahead, Mr. Reese.
I just want to add, just to put anyone's mind at ease, I'm not trying to sell off any apartment or divide this house up. The only reason I didn't go for an in-law apartment, I just don't want any trouble with it not being like a blood relative or something. If I rented to someone else, that's all. It's,
Okay. Thank you. Can you just mute your
yeah.
thing? All right, Paul and Nicole Riley, did you want to speak?
Hi, how are you? It's Nicole. I just wanted to say, if you were looking for history on the house, I've talked to the town historian on our own house for information. So you could try Alan Clemens, and he would know the history on the property. He knows everything about houses in town, the older houses. So if you wanted to start there, it would probably be a good starting point.
What's your address again?
300 High Street, we're the horse farm.
Yeah, 300 High Street. So, Mr. Reese, that was to you. Mr. Clemens is someone you could speak to about the history of the house. That's what she was referring to. If you're looking for a starting point, beyond that, you can go to the assessor's office, and obviously a little bit of deed work. All right, thank you. Can you put your microphone on mute? Nicole?
Sure can. Let me just try to figure out how to do it.
Thank you. Okay, do I have any other abutters that want to speak in regards to this application? All right, I'm gonna bounce it back. Mr. Buckley, do you have any comments? We can't hear you. Hold on.
Hold on, how about now?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
No, actually, what Kev brought up is a good point. I didn't really have any comments besides that, but I just noticed that you have a chat here that's something Mark Vess, I don't know if you noticed that yet, asked if you can turn on his audio.
Who's that?
It's in the little chat.
All right.
Everything looks good on our end here from
Yeah.
Eric from Cable speaking.
Yeah, let me, Mark Vest, let me try it here, see if I can,
He looks like he's been enabled to speak and his microphone seems to be opened on his end, so it may be a technological.
yeah, Mr. Vest, we can see you here and, you should be able to speak on our end. I'm not sure if it's a technical difficulty with your end. But I can see you are muted, but I think that's on your end. All right. Well, if you figure it out, we are here. We're gonna move on. Mr. Pratty, do you have any comments?
No, Mr. Perkins brought up several good points that I would really like the answers to before really moving on and making a decision on this case. One thing I would recommend is possibly bringing in a better set of building plans so, that have more dimensions on them so that when it does come time for a vote, we know exactly what we are and are not voting for.
Okay. So, Mr. Reese, just to reiterate that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, are you looking for, Mr. Pratty, are you looking for maybe existing layout of the existing structure, additionally, a more detailed plan of the proposed apartment, or?
What I'd really like to see is a more detailed plan of the proposed apartment. If he'd like to show some of the existing dwelling, that would help, at least in the elevations.
Yeah.
But as far as floor plan goes, I'd really like to get some more dimensions on the interior.
Okay, makes sense. Mr. Reese, did you get that?
Yes, so the plan itself, I mean, as far as like the drawing itself, that's okay, you just want more dimensions on it? It seems to have everything in there, right down to the toilet and the sink, the shower.
Well, Mr. Reese, I think what he's talking about is, you do, I mean, it's a nice picture, but I think what he's talking about is interior dimensions. How wide is it? How long is it?
Sure.
How big are the room?
Yep,
You know, things like
Yep.
that. I mean,
dimensions.
dimensions, right? And then if you could also provide some exterior elevations of the existing, pictures of where the access is gonna come out.
Gotcha.
Things like that, so we can get a better vision of what we're actually approving, where the window's gonna be for the egress, things like that, so the board can actually see what you can see without being there.
Gotcha.
I'd also like to see ceiling heights wherever possible.
Yep.
All right. All right, so any other comments from the board? All right. And all the abutters have spoken. So I guess what we're gonna do is, we're gonna move to a continuance on this. Excuse me for 1 second. I'm gonna mute my microphone for one. Okay. Mr. Reese, are you available June 8th at 7:30? Would that work for you?
Sure.
All right, so I'm going to move to a motion to continue on 270 High Street, map 49, lot 29. Can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right, so we're gonna do a roll call vote. Mr. Buckley? Mr. Perkins?
There you go. Aye.
Mr. Perkins?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. All right, so the meeting is continued to June 8th at 7:30. If you could have those documents prepared, Mr. Reese, it'd be greatly appreciated. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact Virginia at the zoning office, and we can try to help facilitate those questions. Have a good night. Thank
Okay.
you.
Do you want these things that you're requesting, do you want them submitted to you before the meeting? So you have them in front of you?
Of course,
Okay,
of course.
yep, okay, thank you.
As soon as you can. Thank you. All right. I'm gonna mute for 1 second. All right, so Egan Development is on for 7:15. We're running 15 minutes behind, but I'm going to read that into the record, and we're going to open that hearing. The Hanson Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on March 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the Hanson Middle School in the MGL Chapter 40A in the application of Egan Development for a special permit and site plan approval to allow for the demolition of the existing house and commercial building and the construction of 2 3-story mixed residential commercial buildings. Building 1 having 3 first-floor commercial units, 14 1-bedrooms and 12 2-bedrooms. Building 2 having 3 first-floor commercial units, 10 1-bedrooms and 3 1+ bedroom units and 10 2-bedroom units, as well as associated site improvements and related signage at Station Landing, 965 and 999 Main Street, map 42, lots 9 and 10. Hanson's assessors map. Property is located in the flexible overlay. This meeting was continued to this evening, which is May 11th, 2021 at 7:15 p.m. I'm going to, on behalf of the Egan Development project, is his engineer here, or attorney that would like to speak? Or Mr. Egan? Barry Crimmins. 1 second.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can, go ahead.
Thank you. In addition to myself on this matter, Mr. Egan should be on the call, as well as his engineer, Bob Crowell, as well as my partner, Noreen O'Toole.
Okay.
So if you could allow them to join the meeting?
Yep, I can see them.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yep.
Since I could not, I wasn't sure if they were on the meeting or not.
Yeah, I just can't see. I can see their names. I just can't see what it's in regards to. I can see Steve's name in here. I can see Noreen's name.
Sure.
Your name.
Okay, great. And
ahead.
then when the time comes, Mr. Chairman, will I be able to share my screen to be able to pull up the site plan?
Yes, that's what I was trying to do. I apologize. This is our first night doing Zoom, and I had it figured out earlier. And Ryan, can I get your?
I
Yes,
believe.
I can promote Barry to a panelist, and he should be able to share from his screen if he
Okay.
All right.
it has
Okay,
the
that would be-
documents ready.
Okay, that would be great.
All right, I'll do that now.
But super, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so are you ready for us to proceed, Mr. Chairman?
I am. Go ahead.
1 second, Barry. You're going to drop out for a second as you
okay.
come into the committee list. So just
All right,
wait about
Thank-
10 seconds.
sure.
All right, you should be all set now, Barry. If you should have a share screen at the bottom of your window.
Okay, yes, I do. Great, thank you. I'm not gonna pull up the plan quite yet. I just want to make sure I would be able to do it when the time comes.
Okay.
So, okay, super. Um, Let me just, I'll take myself off there. There you go. Now you can see me live and in person.
All right.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, if I may again just introduce the members of our project team here on behalf of Egan Development. Again, Mr. Stephen Egan is present. As you mentioned, you have the names on your screen.
Yeah.
His engineer, Bob Crowell from Crowell Engineering, and along with myself, my partner, Noreen O'Toole with Platinum Partners. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, this matter was originally on for a hearing on March 9th. At that time, it got continued to April 13th.
Yep.
The April 13th meeting was continued without testimony being given to tonight's meeting. In the meantime, the board assigned this project for review by Merrill Engineering. And I believe you've received the project review by Merrill dated March 19th.
Yes, I have that in front of me.
Since our receipt of Merrill's project review, our project engineer, Bob Crowell, has followed up with Merrill and has submitted a revised site plan, which is the one in a moment that I'm going to hopefully try to share with my screen so that Bob can reference that. We were having a little technical difficulties ourselves with the share screening, so hopefully I'll be able to share it, and Bob can kind of walk the members through the changes that were made just as recently as last week from the original plan that was submitted dated August 14th of 2020. So changes were made to address comments that were made in the Merrill review report, as well as comments received by the planning board from their memo of March 9th as well. This project, Mr. Chairman, as you indicated in the reading of the legal notice, proposes the demolition of the existing residential dwelling at 965 Main Street, as well as the demolition of the commercial dwelling at 999 Main Street, and proposes the construction of two separate mixed-use buildings. Each building will have 3 commercial units on the first floor. They will each total approximately 3,138 square feet of commercial space in each building, for a total of 6,276 feet of commercial space altogether. Building 1 has 14 one-bedroom units and 12 two-bedroom units for a total of 26 residential units. Building 2 has the same amount of commercial space, a little over 3,000 square feet, and has 10 one-bedroom units, 3 one-plus bedroom units, and 10 two-bedroom units for a total of 23 units. So between the 2 buildings, we have a total of 49 units, and we have a total of 6,276 square feet of commercial space. The parking required for as you all know, the residential units are required to have 2 spaces per dwelling unit for a total of 98 spaces. The commercial space is required to have 1 space for every 150 square feet of floor area for a total of 42 spaces. So the total between the 2 uses is 140 spaces, and that's what we have on the revised plan, 140 spaces. The 49 units are situated on approximately 3.5 acres of land. It works out to a density of approximately 14 units per acre. If I could just mention a couple of the project benefits, Mr. Chairman, and then if I may, I'll call upon Mr. Crowell to go through the changes that have been made to the site plan. This project as a mixed-use development is, as you all know, within the flexible development district. Flexible development district allows for mixed use by special permit from the board. So it's consistent with the bylaw. It's also consistent with the governor's recent housing choice program. which contains a lot of components to it. If you've had an opportunity to review it at all, if you have not, one of the components classifies communities that have either a train station or a bus station within it, which obviously Hanson, just down the street from this site, there is the commuter rail station, and it classifies those communities as MBTA communities. And it requires those communities to designate a district within a yet to be defined radius of the commuter rail in this particular case for multifamily housing to be allowed as of right. And the sort of the stick with that carrot is that communities could lose aid, transportation aid and other state aid if they fail to address that issue. Once again, DHCD is supposed to be promulgating guidelines for when these things have to happen and some of the other details. But suffice it to say, communities that are classified as an MBTA community are going to be required to create such a district that allows for multifamily housing as of right within those districts. One of the components of that is a density component of 15 units per acre. So if that density requirement or minimum, I should say, were to be applied to this project at 3.5 acres, it would amount to 53 units. And once again, we're proposing 49 units. So we're consistent with what we see coming down the road as this community, as well as about 180 communities in the state that are designated as MBTA communities, having to designate these multifamily districts, once again, as of right. The anticipated tax revenue as a result of this project coming online with the buildings to be constructed, estimated conservatively at approximately $150,000 in real estate taxes per year. It's interesting that I noticed on the town's website that at your town election coming up Saturday, you have an override on the ballot, $1.8 million. This type of redevelopment and a development of your commercial and industrial tax base will hopefully help to prevent such an override from being necessary in the future. The rents on the apartments are estimated to be anywhere between $2,000 and $2,300 per month for the various apartments. It's anticipated that the attraction for this development certainly is going to be the location of the train station just down the street. So we anticipate that primarily the market is going to be single people, married couples, perhaps with no children, or maybe just a young child. But probably they would quickly outgrow these units once they were to start to have more children. But hopefully they would then remain in community and look to buy condominium or a single family home of their own. With that, Mr. Chairman, I think what I'd like to do is call upon Bob Crowell, if I may, to run through some of the changes that were made in the site plan, once again, in response to the memo from Merrill Engineering. There is another issue that was brought to my attention when I was first brought on board on this case, which relates to the zoning bylaw and which particular section of the bylaw applies, which I'll come back to that issue after we go through the site plan, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, so yeah, we can send it to Bob Kroll to go through the changes that were made. And in regards to that, I did read your memo, Mr. Crimmins. And yeah, you want to circle back around to that towards the end. We'll kind of go through everything first and we can circle back around to that.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right,
So,
Mr. Kroll, you have the floor.
But hopefully I can get my screen. And I knew this would happen. I think I reduced it. If you can give me 1 second, Mr. Chairman, I just need to pull this up on my screen and then I should be good. Bear with me for 1 second.
let me,
Okay, have it there. Now let me get back to. Yeah. Let's see. Oops, wrong button. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this will work. And there we go. Okay, and I'm gonna go to sheet 3, Bob, unless you want me to,
Oh, sheet 3 is great.
okay. There we go, and I can increase it to try
Yeah,
to,
please do. Yeah.
I don't want to lose anything on the screen. Is that,
That's good.
can folks see that okay?
yes, I can, yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Bob, take it away.
Okay. One of the comments was about parking, and parking areas is supposed, if you're supposed to divide it up into 25 spaces and divide it up and have a landscape area. Well, the parking is where it needs to be. And what I did is I looked at the commercial space, and for the parking for the commercial area, it's the net area for the commercial space. So I reduced the area based on the thickness of the walls and at least 3 partitions. There'll also be walkways, so my number's probably on the light side, but I had about a little over 600 square feet. I think it was like 650. And if you divide it by 150, I was able to reduce the number of spaces by 4. So we had 144 spaces before, we have 140 now. And so what I did, if you look at building 1, there's a parking space, and I have, it says LA, and it's, I don't know if you can see that. There's a handicap space, and if you go up 2
And in this
spaces,
area here,
See it, yeah.
okay, so I made that a landscape area. And then if you go up on the other side, you go down the concrete walk, I have a landscape area on both sides. And then in the next area, I have one more. Come over,
Right here.
right there, yes,
Yep.
yeah. So I took the 4 spaces and I created a landscape. Is it exactly what's required? They want 10 feet. It's not quite it, but in between, in between these landscaped areas here is where the septic system is. And you can't plant anything on top of that. But at least I think we're trying to meet the intent of the regulation there. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. In addition to the review by Peter Palmieri at Merrill, we also had some comments from the Conservation Commission. And one of the things when we got the site approved for 965, the runoff for a 100-year storm, you had to design for 7 inches for a 24-hour 100-year storm. They would like to increase that to 8.76. I believe that's the number. And so we ran our calculations and changed that. So what did that do? We had to change some of the heights of the outlet structures in the basin. So we had to do.
Bob, so you had to go to 8.76 inches?
Yes, for a 100-year storm. So we did that.
Okay.
So why don't we go to sheet 5? I think if you go up the side there, you can. There we go.
We'll get there.
my cursor doesn't let me just scroll down with the arrow. I have to do it this way, unfortunately. This sheet, Bob, right?
Yes. All right, let's shrink that up a little bit so I can see the whole site.
Over.
All right, slide it over.
Yep.
And then maybe make it a little bit bigger.
Okay.
All right,
Getting rid
slide
of-
it over.
Okay.
Just a little smaller, just a touch.
If I do it any small, we're gonna go back to what I just had it at. That's what
Okay,
happens.
all right.
So,
Okay, go back to where you were.
hold on, maybe if
You can do a drop down in that percentage, yeah.
Yeah, but it's gonna make it.
Well, you know
even
what,
sm-
why don't you just slide it over to the right, or yeah, let's just,
Over here?
we can start on this side.
Yeah.
Okay, and now make it bigger?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
Does that work, Bob?
Yep, let's go up so we can see the whole side.
Hold on.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
We redefined both swales. There's a swale on either side of the property. On this side of building 2, the west side of building 2, and on the east side of building 1. And it's a little bit better defined, and it kind of guarantees that the water's going to go to where we're directing it to. The other thing, so basically the water on this side, it runs to the back corner, the back southwest corner. And why don't we drop it down a little bit if we can, so we can see some of the railroad track. Sorry.
Oh, the tracks?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, but Mr. Crowe, when you're talking about the southwest corner, you're talking about what the outlet, the spillway is?
Well, the swale ends right there. There's riprap back in that corner.
Yep. Okay.
So a couple things that we did, and it's conservation wanted us to kind of redirect things a little bit. And so we redistributed where the water's going a little bit, and we put a little bit more water going to this corner. And he was concerned about the water coming out of the catch basin to the outlet. And so we dropped less water going out in that direction. And another thing we added, one of the comments that Peter mentioned was we added contours to the track area. And that's now on there. And we took that from a plan, and it pretty well matches what we have and where it ties in. Why don't we slide it over to the east?
Good. Want to drop down a little?
You can,
mean,
yeah, drop it.
I should
And
have
you can see it's the swale on the eastern side of the building. It's much more defined, and so half the building 1 runs off into that, and it just goes right into the wetland area. It just directs it over there. So one other thing that we changed to reduce the amount of water going out of the basin is we added a small 18, well, it's not small, it's 18 by 70 foot drainage basin, and it's made of 4 42-inch CMP, corrugated metal pipe, with a 3/4 inch or 1.5 inch stone around it. And CB1, if you can see that, there's a storm scepter there. And so we're going into that, and we used to go from CB1 directly into the into the infiltration base, but now we're sending it into this, and we're sending it out into, and the overflow will go into the wetlands. So those are the changes that we made with the drainage. But you know, if you just looked at the plan, you don't see too much. But that basin is a change, and we just made the swales more defined, so the abutters will not see any water if they build it this way. I spoke with the water department, and we were looking at one time to do 2 tie-ins into the 12-inch main in the Main Street. Why don't we go down towards Main Street if we could?
Okay.
Okay, right there, that's good. So what he had suggested, so what we're trying to do is we're going to have a 6-inch line that already goes to Marston's 999 presently, and we will use that to support the fire suppression system for building 2. And rather than, we'll only have to put in 1 connection to the main, we'll put one 8-inch ductile iron tie-in rather than do 2. We'll come in and then reduce it to 6 inches and put a fire hydrant. And then we'll run the domestic to both 1 and 2 from there. And we can also run a 6-inch line from there to building 1. So it'll save a little bit of money. So I've been talking to him about that. And so that's what we're doing with the water.
So just to be clear, Mr. Kroll, so you're saying Marston's got a 6-inch coming in, you're gonna come off of that for the fire suppression?
Yes,
In building 2, is it?
building 2, yes.
And then you're gonna come off the 12 with an 8 to a 6, pick
Yeah.
up domestic water, the hydrant, and
Yeah.
the suppression in building 1?
Correct.
Okay. What was
It's-
that? What was
it-
that? This is save the other tap-in fee? Is that what it was?
Well, it's not just that, it's, there's several enormous lines out there that go to Brockton.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
You only want to go out there once.
Understood. Yep.
So that was a big thing, and I actually was going back and forth with him last week, so I'll run it by him one more time to make sure everything's good.
Yeah. Yep. If the water department's good with it, I guess, we're good.
If we can, let's see, go back to sheet 3.
Okay.
Okay, let's, okay,
This one here,
okay,
all right?
yeah, okay. Let's go to the west. Go to the right, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. One of the comments Peter had mentioned was we're adding a, let's see, we're putting a guardrail behind the 15 spaces behind building 2. And it's right past, you see a bunch of little black dots on there. They're 6 feet apart. They're 8 by 8 pressure treated, and you'd have a 3 by 8 foot guardrail going across. And that's just to keep people, want people to hop on the train from there. So
Yeah.
and one other thing he had mentioned was putting a fence along the wall, and it presently there is a fence along there right now, but I would probably, after the retaining walls in place, you probably want to put a new one in because it's going to be considerably higher.
Yeah, of course. Do you have that in the plan now, Mr. Kroll?
I don't have that the chain link fence. I'll have to add that to it. But.
Well, what I'm saying is, so you're talking about to the east of the guardrail you were just talking about. You're talking about that section there where it's got our.
That's the only place where the guardrail is, and then we was talking about Peter can talk about it, but they want to have a fence along the retaining wall, I believe.
Well, what's the drop gonna be from the top of the retaining wall to?
Well, that's the whole reason you want to have a retaining wall along there. Let's see, if we go to, we can go back to the last plan or go to, let's see. Either go to the next plan, plan 4.
4.
That's the grading plan. Okay, you can stop there.
Yep.
So we have elevation 75, a 74 there, and you can see there's a 64, 62. So there's a bit of a drop. I mean, it's not a drop, but it's a slope. To the track.
So you're going from what, 70, 75, 76 to?
Yeah. Well, the top of the wall will be around 74.
Yep.
And if you look at the infiltration basin, we have a 74.
Yeah.
A little bit over 74.
Yeah. But then I'm just looking, so 74, then down to the bottom there, though, where you're showing the 64. So it's a 10-foot drop over a short span, right?
Well, it's a slope. It's a slope, but we'll have a retaining wall and a fence there to keep
Okay.
people from.
Yeah, there is I don't know if I can be heard. This is Steve Egan, but there is a drop there now. That concrete platform used to be where Ocean Spray would load all the cranberries onto the track. So that was set up as a like a T-type platform area. So there is currently a drop there that already exists, and there is a fence along that platform that the T had already put up too.
Yeah, it's on the outside of the platform. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's there now.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't actually been by the site personally, or back there anyways. But yeah, I mean, that's, we'll leave that up to the review engineer. I think, maybe for cosmetic purposes, it might be nice to put a fence there. So you're not looking at, the tracks and all that, but, and then.
Well, there's going to be quite a bit of plantings.
Yeah.
Small trees and stuff, but
Yeah.
you should have a fence there just to protect people from
Yeah.
getting down there.
Yeah, that would be the second reason, or the first primary reason, but secondary to, do you want to go, anything else, Mr. Kroll? Do you want to keep going?
I mean, I think that's the basic changes. I mean, if you just looked at it, there hasn't been a lot of changes, but the swales have changed. We added the grading in the back, but the buildings pretty much stayed the same. We did add wheelchair ramps. We've added that on there. We added dimensioning to sheet 3 that showed all the dimensions of all the roadways and the curves and all. So we've done that.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. I'm gonna bounce this back to Peter Palmieri, our review engineer from Maryland Associates. Peter, you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. So you heard the points that Mr. Kroll went over. I know you had your review. Is there anything he missed in your review? I haven't compared the two. I'm sure you have. Or any points you'd like to bring up?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I really haven't compared the two. I received the revised plans, stormwater calculations, and the response letter yesterday.
Okay.
And then I received soil testing information today, and I have not had a chance to look at it. I did quickly page through the plans. It looks like a lot of our comments have been addressed, but I really don't feel comfortable saying going beyond that.
Okay.
In a general sense, a lot of comments have been addressed.
I appreciate that. So we'll give you time to kind of go through that, and we can circle back around at the next meeting. So was there anything that you wanted to bring up, Peter, or do you want to kind of go through everything first?
Well, I think that I'd like to go through everything first. I have spoken to Bob a couple times over the last couple days. He and I think, are on the same page as far as moving forward. I think that the increase in the rainfall as requested by conservation, the rainfall amounts, I don't think we'll have an appreciable amount of change as far as the calculations. But again, I need to go through the specific calculations. So a lot of changes have been made, a lot of details have been added, but I think there's some more work to be done, I think.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Well, thank you, Peter, and we'll wait for you to go through that, and we'll circle back around at the next meeting, and maybe we'll have some more definitive talking points at that point in time. All right.
Okay.
So, Mr. Egan, did you want to add anything else?
No, I think these guys have hit it on the head. We've tried to incorporate the changes that the engineer obviously wanted. We've looked at the planning board comments and tried to incorporate those too. Like I said, we feel this is a great project for that area. And I think it'll be a good shot in the arm to kind of get things going down around that T station.
Excellent. 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 Thank you. Mr. Crimmins, did you want to, back to you?
Sure. Do you want me to address the zoning issue that we were referring to?
Yeah, I think that's important. So at this point in time, Peter hasn't had an opportunity to go through everything for us to actually go through all the review comments and
right.
You got. So I think at this point in time, it's important at least to kind of, go with that talking point so we can give you some direction either way. And with the board's position on that?
Sure. And I guess at the outset, well, two things. We appreciate Peter's review. We recognize that he only just got the revised plans over the last couple of days, so we were not anticipating closing the hearing tonight, Mr. Chairman. We understand that he needs time to complete his review, but we felt we would just sort of give a summary of some of the more salient changes that had been made to the site plan, just to bring the board up to date on what has been done. But we welcome receiving Peter's additional comments once he's had a chance to complete his review. Ms. Costley was good enough to mention to us this morning that for that reason, we were most likely, if not conclusively, not going to close tonight's hearing. So we certainly understand that.
Yeah.
Is Attorney Winter on the meeting tonight, Mr. Chairman?
He is not, but I did.
Tonight?
He is. Sorry. Yeah, he is not in the meeting tonight. He had a conflict. But I did speak to him this afternoon. Obviously,
Okay.
I know he was supposed to touch base with you today. Did you guys ever talk?
He did, and he had indicated the same to me, that he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make tonight's meeting or not. He did indicate to me that he had spoken to you. I guess if he's not, could I ask, have the other members been provided with a copy of my memo?
They have been emailed a copy of your memo, yes.
Okay, and they and perhaps in the same category as Mr. Palmieri's review. I'm not sure if they've all had an opportunity to review it. We were kind of rushing to get that into Attorney Winter for his review, and then we forwarded it to Ms. Costley this morning to distribute it to the members. I can kind of summarize it. If folks, do the members have the hard copy, or do they have access to my memo presently?
So I can tell you, I have a hard copy of your memo in front of me. I did bring that to the meeting tonight. They may have it on another electronic application.
Okay.
So they may have a copy.
Okay, great.
Josh, Mr. Pratty, do you have a copy of it? Unmute. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, did you want me to go ahead, or Mr.
No,
Pratty?
Mr. Pratty, I'm trying to see if he has a copy of it, and we can just comment if he has a copy of your memo.
Okay.
I do have a copy of it. I'm just trying to find it in my email again.
Mr. Perkins, do you have a copy of it?
I'm sure I do. I'm trying to dig through my emails right now.
Okay.
Who was it sent by? Was it sent by Virginia, or was it sent?
So what happened? What happened was it was sent by Virginia. It was forwarded to you today. Originally, it was supposed to get sent to Virginia, and then she was supposed to forward it off, but there was some miscommunication that was sent to Brian Winter, and we just got it today. So it would have been sent to you this morning. Early this morning, probably around 10:30ish, I would imagine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure who I should search by in my search bar here.
Virginia.
Look under Barry Crimmins.
Oh, Barry Crimmins. That was.
I think if Virginia forwarded it to the members, it would probably be under her name.
Yeah. We've gotten quite a few emails today, so they're trying to.
I'm sure.
But
Mr.
anyways,
Perkins.
while they're looking for it, Mr. Crimmins. So again, we can kind of have a dialogue with what they're looking for. But so I did speak to Brian. I mean, obviously, you understand his position, right?
Well, to be honest with you, Mr. Chairman, and I've known Brian for many years. I've worked with him in other communities, and I respect Brian's position. I think Brian does a very good job of sort of advising boards of what sort of their parameters are without telling them definitively that they have to do one thing or another, and he kind of leaves it to the discretion of the boards, in my experience, so long as they're operating within those parameters. I can kind of go through sort of a quick summary of what my points are, and I'm not planning on reading the memo into the record. So I can kind of summarize my points that led to the conclusion that I reached, if that's appropriate.
Yes, yeah, you could probably start. I'm sure they haven't found it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so most of it is in reference to the bylaw, so it's something that certainly the members will be familiar with. And so that there's two, there's two sections of the flexible bylaw, under section 6. And if you were looking at the bylaw itself, it's page 26, section 6, where flexible zoning bylaw starts at the bottom. It starts with a category of permitted uses, and it lists about A through G. I think that's 7 permitted uses. It then goes through a series of dimensional and density requirements, minimum lot area, minimum frontage, minimum setbacks, maximum total coverage. And then at the bottom of that page, page 27, it states that uses permitted by special permit granted by the Board of Appeals as provided in section 8D. And it lists, I don't know what the number is. I think when you account for the ones that say omitted by intention or disapproved by the Attorney General, I think there are 16 uses listed by special permit. In item T as in Thomas, states structures containing more than one but not more than 8 dwelling units provided, and then it goes through a series of criteria. So section T would suggest, it says structures containing more than 8, I'm sorry, more than one but not more than 8 dwelling units. So we have that category on the one hand. On the other hand, if you then go to the next page, it has a section that does not have a number, a letter associated with it, but it states additional uses allowed by special permit. Now, keep in mind, the prior 16 uses that are listed are uses allowed by special permit as well. And I think this is an important distinction. But it says additional uses allowed by special permit. And it says in the flexible zone district, the following uses may be allowed by special permit. And it says uses permitted: A, mixed use in one structure, i.e. residence and business, and B, assisted living residence at a limit of 6 in one structure. So here in this category, these two uses are sort of called out as separate categories, separate from the 16 previous uses that are listed as uses allowed by special permit in the flexible development district. And it under mixed use, it doesn't contain any limitation on the number of units. For assisted living, it says at a limit of 6 in one structure. So basically, the analysis, and if you have my memo, for those that were able to find it, starting on page 3, I have section C, which is argument and support. And here, if I may, Mr. Chairman, again, I won't read it verbatim, but some of these points I think are important to keep in context. So to some extent, I may need to. So our first argument, if you will, or our first point is there is no such restriction listed in the category for additional uses allowed by special permit. There is also no such restriction listed in the category of mixed use. If the draftsman intended for such a restriction to apply to these uses, then it is reasonable to assume they would have included such a restriction. The fact that they did not, it is equally reasonable to assume that they intended to not include such a restriction in this use category. Basically, it's suggesting that, why were these two categories called out differently than the other 16 use categories? And I would suggest that there was special treatment intended for these two categories. Otherwise, they would have just been included as items 17 and 18 under the other special permit categories. Point number 2 is one cannot read into bylaws or ordinances language that does not appear in such bylaw or ordinance unless clearly necessary to resolve an ambiguity in such ordinance or bylaw. Here, there is no such ambiguity, so no such language can be or should be read into its clear, unambiguous meaning. Some people have suggested that because there's a restriction on the number of units in item T, that somehow that restriction carries over to these additional uses. And there's no rational basis for such an argument. you have these two uses in a separate category all to themselves. And so to attempt to read into them a restriction on the number of units that appears in another category goes against the basic rules of judicial construction. You're simply not supposed to read into a bylaw language that's not necessary to, again, to resolve an ambiguity in the bylaw. Point number three, if such a restriction were intended to apply to such uses, there would be no reason to list such uses in a separate category as opposed to simply listing them as two additional categories in the provisions in the previous section of the bylaw that lists 16 other uses allowed by special permit. Why would the draftsman list these two categories under additional uses allowed by special permit unless there was an intent by the draftsman that these two categories were intended to be treated differently than the prior 16 uses that are also allowed by special permit? Again, I've alluded to that already. One thing I did not mention here is even within that category, for the assisted living residents, the draftsman did put in a restriction of 6 per structure. So right within that section, there was a limitation imposed in one with no such limitation imposed in the other. Point number 4, the draftsman clearly intended to create a separate category for mixed use defined as residence and business in one structure, as opposed to the category prior section of the bylaw for structures containing more than one but not more than 8 dwelling units. The latter section can more likely be defined as multifamily structures containing only residential units, as opposed to the former category, which clearly is intended to apply to mixed-use structures. Point number 5, the introductory section of the flexible bylaw is likewise enlightening of the issue, wherein it states as follows. The flexible zone district of this bylaw is intended to provide for a mixture of residential, agricultural, business, commercial, and industrial and mixed uses, provided that such use does not detract from the livability and aesthetic qualities of the environment. And emphasis added on my written memo. The draftsman clearly intended that mixed use be a desired result of the town adopting this bylaw, as it expressly provided for in the above quoted purpose clause of the bylaw. In addition, while single-family residences are listed as a permitted use in the flexible bylaw district, multifamily is listed as a use permitted by special permit with the restriction contained in section T for not more than 8 dwelling units. However, for the reasons stated above, the draftsman also clearly intended mixed use would contain no such restriction, or else they would have included such a restriction as they did for the multifamily category. And again, as I mentioned, as they did for the assisted living category. I would suggest that an equally plausible explanation for this distinction was a concern for large-scale multifamily developments, while the same concern was not shared for mixed-use development. To the contrary, mixed use was clearly a desired result of the bylaw, and the draftsman clearly intended to encourage such uses by not including a limit on the number of units, as it did for the multifamily use category. And then lastly, Mr. Chairman, in the next paragraph, what I state is we're not suggesting that there are no limitations on the number of units that somebody can propose, but rather that the limitation is based on those dimensional and density requirements that are contained in the bylaw that I referred to after section T, and actually after the reference to those 2 special permits, where it talks about density requirements, parking requirements, etc. Those limitations, as in any case, impose a restriction on the number of units, the size of your lot, whether there are wetlands on the lot, the amount of upland area, etc., etc. Finally, the suggestion that there be a restriction of 8 units as contained in section T would also fly in the face of, if this is a 3.5 acre site, we're proposing 49 units. If we had a 10-acre site, to suggest that that same site could also only have 8 units just doesn't seem to make sense from any sort of reasonable interpretation of the bylaw. So again, Mr. Chairman, I think the main distinction here is the draftsman called out these 2 special uses separately from the other uses allowed by special permit. They did not put a restriction on the number of units in the bylaw, and so it's not appropriate to read such a restriction into the bylaw. So for that reason, Mr. Chairman, we would suggest that there is not an explicit restriction on the number of units for a mixed-use development, but rather a restriction based on density and dimensional requirements that I alluded to. So that basically is our position on this issue, and that's why we feel it's still appropriate with both the spirit of the bylaw as well as the letter of the bylaw, that the project be allowed to go forward with the proposed 49 units. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions that the members may have.
Well, I'll start off by just talking about my position on it, and after many discussions with town council, originally it came up when the review engineer did a review. That was something that stood out to him. We sent it off to town council. Town council had agreed that it is kind of ambiguous, right? It certainly isn't open-ended. And talking about more than one but not more than 8 per building, the idea was in these districts are you could have more than one building on a lot, but not more than 8 units per building. So if you can meet 40 feet separation under section T, I think it is T6, level 6, under that paragraph, section 6. It just, so in other words, that's kind of the intent behind those not more than 1, but not more than 8 with 40 feet separation. So they could actually limit you to the amount of units you could actually do on a given lot. Now, I'm not even saying, I agree that it's ambiguous, but again, it's not, I don't believe it is unlimited in nature. I think, and from a personal, perspective, I like this project. I think that, we need development and redevelopment down in that district, but it's the vehicle in which we get there to protect the town and the board, right? So, and that's the most important thing to me, is how do we, get to a common goal the correct way without opening up Pandora's box, right? So if we would interpret this by special permit that it's, unlimited or, by nature, and not by some other vehicle, but by variance, which makes it more site specific, then I think that then it kind of is up to the board in the future. Then we go to each lot and we say, we think you can do 30, or maybe there you can do 20. And then it becomes the board's discretion in terms of the number of units rather than, site specific, where in nature, this one is near the train station and but the flexible overlay spans, far further than that. And that's my main concern. Other applications after this one and kind of setting precedent. So it's the vehicle in which we get there is my position on it. And I think this should be done by special permit and by variance. This is site specific, and you could come up with hardships. I can come up with a few off the top of my head. And then we could, look at the application as it is, but just through another vehicle. And that's my position on it.
I know the other members, I'm sure, want to comment as well, Mr. Chairman, but if I could just briefly respond to that. I think because this application is for a special permit, you do have that ability. It's implicit within the bylaw, within the special permit, that you have the ability, for instance, if you feel 49 units is not appropriate for this site, you could request that we consider reducing the number of units.
Yeah.
But I would rather entertain that type of a discussion than to suggest that we would need to go the variance route if we were under the restriction of the no more than 8 units. I just don't think the no more than 8 units applies, because there's nothing in that category that talks about mixed-use development. The only place you find mixed-use development is in the next section.
So
Can I make one comment?
So yes, hold on for 1 second, Mr. Cremens. Who just spoke?
That's Steve Egan.
Go ahead, Steve.
So just to add on to what Barry has been talking about, the other thing is when you look at the multifamily requirements under that section with no more than 8 units, everything it describes is describing townhouse style buildings, which is not really conducive to mixed use. It's asking for 2 exposures, and it's describing you having a district where you're going to be basically building townhouses, not multi-story structures. And I think that's part of why mixed use would put separately. Mixed use is typically commercial first floor and multifamily above, and you can't really accomplish with the style buildings of mixed use or what we're doing, you can't accomplish all of those goals that you guys have within there. Number 2,
go ahead.
Brought this up to the board before. Joe Marangello next door went in front of you guys and got approved for 34 units in that building, along with a whole section of commercial. And there was no variance and no waiver of more than 8 units because it was a mixed use project. And there was no limitation on there. And if there was a limitation on there, and you're suggesting that we have to get a variance, then that would have been voted on that one also.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I think I brought this up in the last meeting also, Steve, in response to that. That was redevelopment. That wasn't this board. That was a board, prior to this board. I think there's all new members. So, we can't be held to the same standard as the board prior to us. But at the same time, that was redevelopment. I think I would imagine at the time they wanted something done. They wanted the place cleaned up, and they were trying to.
And I view this project as redevelopment also. I mean, we have 999, which is in very tough condition. Next door to it, and as part of the property, there was a building there till 2012 that burned down, and then 965 next to it. So we view this as a redevelopment project. But that being said, redevelopment or not, if you're saying the 8 units applies, it would have applied to that building, redevelopment or not, they would have had to address the 8 units.
Well, Steve, so I'm not saying the 8 units applies. What I'm saying to you is, or what I'm saying to your attorney is this, that back to what you were just saying about that building, it was redeveloped within the existing structure, for one. That was my first point. I understand you're redeveloping it, but you're demolishing both buildings, you're starting brand new. So to compare a renovation of an existing structure to units to what you're doing, it's just comparing, apples and oranges. They're both fruit, but they're different fruit. So back to what we were talking about, I'm not saying, Steve, you're restricted to 8. What I'm saying is, by us allowing you to interpret this as you're interpreting it, what I'm saying is it creates issues down the road. That's all I'm saying to you. So we're not saying that, I'm not saying anyways, I'm not sure what the rest of the board, I'm not saying that it doesn't work the way it is, right? What I'm saying to you is it's the vehicle in which we get there to look out for the town's best interest, right? And protect the zoning board. That's what I'm saying to you. I'm not saying that we want you to do more than 1, not more than 8. We want you to put 10 buildings here and spread them out by 40 feet. That's not what I'm saying to you. What I'm saying to you is we want to work with you, but we also want you to work with the board and understand my position or our position and try to accomplish the same goal through the proper vehicle. That's all I'm saying to you.
I believe this is a good thing for the town. This is a great thing for the town. And the reason for it is you have 3.55 acres.
Who's speaking?
This is Bob Kroll.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
The governor signed a memo in January. I don't know what it's called. I forget what it's called, but they want people, towns that have train stations within a half a mile there, they want to increase, they want to have 15 units per acre. So 3.55 acres times 15 units gives you 53 units. 53 units. We could do 53 units based on what the town, what the governor wants. They want to see that near all these train stations within a half a mile. You got it right here with this project. This project helps the town. It provides that. It's perfect for the town. You just walk down the street, you're on the train. And this satisfies that requirement. I think this is a great thing for the town.
Yeah. So Bob, if you heard what I just said, that's not, I didn't say it wasn't. I didn't say it was a good project. I said it was the vehicle in which we got to get to this project. That's what I said. So
no, I understand. But I'm just saying, this is a great thing for the town, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand. So
Mr. Cushing, just real quick, Steve Egan again.
Yeah.
We do think this is the right vehicle for it, and and I know it was a different board, but it was the zoning board for the property next door. There's nothing in the zoning that differentiates between you renovating that building and the existing structure or proposing new. There's nothing in here that gives you the option to do as many units as you want from a multifamily point of view, just because you're renovating a structure as not. It would still require variances. And my point of the conversation, even though it's a different board, is this zoning was, when it was passed, obviously we're trying to determine what was meant by it. And that board at that time, which was closer time frame to when it was passed, viewed it that they didn't need to give any variances for more than 8 units. And you're asking us to although we think it's a special permit is the appropriate, and we're more than willing to listen to input from the board as far as what your thoughts are on the volume and density, but you're asking us to voluntarily impose ourselves to a variance and a higher bar when there's nothing in the zoning that tells us that we need to do that.
Okay. And I respectfully understand. Let me, I have Mr. Perkins that wants to get his hand raised here. Kevin, are you on?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'll make this quick because we're cutting into my dinner time, first of all. So I'm looking at the allowed uses by special permit, and we all know zoning's about intent. So my opinion, the intent of the bylaws is met here. This is a flexible overlay. We can allow hotels, marinas, theaters, museums, bowling alleys, all sorts of items, and we're getting hung up on this, structures containing more than 1, but not more than 8. He could achieve and do the same amount of units or more by just having separate buildings, which I think meets the intent of the bylaw less, going by a multifamily development, but he's doing a mixed use. And if you look underneath T7, like we were talking about before, and before you get to additional uses allowed by special permit, it says right in there essentially what we're talking about. It says any use determined to be of similar character to the permitted uses of this district and to the intent of this district, said determination to be made by the Board of Appeals following petition by landowner, which is exactly what we're talking about. We're making a determination on this that we can make a judgment call here. And in my opinion, that this is mixed use, and this is what this district was intended for. We're not doing this in the residence A. It's not a B. It's not a residential agriculture. It's the flexible overlay. And I think, we have lateral movement here to use some discretion that we all agree this is a great thing for the town. And I think sending them down a road looking for a variance is in my opinion, no, that's not what's needed here. I think we can do this by special permit. And like Mr. Kroll said, that the restrictions on this lot are what dictate what you can do with it by lot coverage, the septic system, just to mention that too, with the design flow of that. But, setbacks, those kind of things, that's what really restricts them to what they can do here. And, I don't agree that, with what you were saying about it being open-ended. They can't do 1,000 units here. And that's what this section says. Any use determined to be similar of character to the permitted use. We have jurisdiction here. It says said determination to be made by the Board of Appeals. So, I don't get hung up on this at all. I think that this is within the intent of the bylaw, and we can do this by special permit. It allows everything else under the sun in this flexible overlay. So why can't we do what he wants to do? That's my position on it. I see right through. I understand Brian's opinion on it, and I have to go against him with my own opinion on it. But I don't think we need that. I don't think we need a variance here.
I'm going to go to Mr. Pratty.
I would have to agree with Mr. Perkins on this. It doesn't say anything in the bylaws for variances, and I think we can move forward with just special permit on this.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's about it for me. I'd like to see what the review engineer has to say moving forward, but I think it's a great project. I'd love to see it happen.
All right.
Bill, I did have a couple other quick things after, if you want to just run through this real quick, just with the intention of the bylaw, and then come back. I just had a couple general things.
Yeah, I just want to circle back to
Yep.
Sean, go ahead. Buckley.
After hearing Mr. Perkins speak about it, I kind of agree with him, but at the same time, I'd also like to, I'm not 100% comfortable with it without kind of being able to talk to Mr. Winter about it to be honest, and kind of get his opinion on it a little more. You know what I mean? Have more discussion with him about it. So, I mean,
Yeah, I understand. Anything else?
no, that's pretty much it. I mean, I understand both your point of views on it, and that's kind of why I'd like to talk to Mr. Winter about it, really.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, so, you know, back to that, and my point is, I talk to, town council primarily. I take their opinion very highly, because at the end of the day, when there's an issue, they're the ones that support us. And when they give me a recommendation or they point me in a certain direction, I am one of the first to try to follow that direction when at all possible. Mr. Perkins, did you want to speak again?
Yeah, it was just some general site-specific things. Do you want to get into that, or?
Site specific in terms of what?
Just general stuff, nothing to do with the section of the bylaws that we were talking about earlier.
Well, I mean, so I think, if you, at this point in time, I think he's more or less looking for direction from the board. And if they're quick points, I guess you can go over them. But again, at the next meeting, Mr. Palmieri's got to go through the review and kind of things. But if you want to go over those points now, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple quick things. I didn't know if there was going to be any generator backup for the pump chambers. I know they had to get into that with Board of Health and have that all approved. Is that at a local level, or was that DEP approval, the design for that?
Bob, can you respond to that?
I think probably this size, you probably do have to have a generator. I'd have to, I'm not certain. I know it has to be wired for a generator, whether you have to have a standing generator there or not. It would make sense to have one.
Right. Yeah, I was just wondering if we're gonna end up dedicating a spot on the site for a pad for a generator, that's all. My other question was, what about snow removal, and where's the snow gonna end up going on the site? Just, to me, it looks like a tough site to plow.
Well, let's see.
Again, if you want to just make notes on these things, these are just things that I'm brainstorming with that you don't have to just, make a decision on the fly here. If you just want to have a kind of a response to them next meeting.
Sure.
And then, dumpsters, emptying schedule. Have you commented on that at all? Is that going to be enough suitable for both buildings?
I believe,
and there won't be any other
talked about
service.
that earlier today with Steve.
There won't be any other service provider, right? It will just be one service for both buildings, one company. There won't be like additional, there won't be any units in here that they can have their own, right? They all have to use those dumpsters.
Correct. Yeah, and we've done other projects that had 24 units in them, which would be similar to either one of these buildings, and the size dumpster that we're showing emptied a couple times a week has worked with those size units.
Okay, so if it were to turn into an issue where you're accumulating a lot more trash, you would just up the scheduling to have them emptied more frequently?
Yep.
Okay. What about, is there any screening on the left for that abutter?
If we go to, I think it's sheet 8, the landscape plan, there's quite a bit of trees planted.
So you did a natural buffer with plantings?
Yes.
With what, just some arborvitaes or evergreens or something?
Real trees, not
high-end stuff, huh?
Yeah, well, let's see, but no, but we do have plantings along that edge. Yeah.
What do you got for space in between them? Are they just kind of, looks like they're staggered?
Yep. I can't remember. I did it a while ago. I had a landscape architect that laid it out for me.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm looking at it. It looks good. I couldn't tell from the other plan we had pulled up. I'm not too familiar with these plans here. I think this is the first time I've sat on this hearing. So, so you got screening there. What about on the rear of the building? Are you gonna end up having lighting and egress doors probably for the businesses, or no? You're gonna end up having lighting that's just gonna be, I'm just really, my questions are really related just to creating a nuisance for
Go to the next plan. Plan 9.
The last one, Bob?
Yes. There it is. So we had some wall lamps at some of the entrances, and we have some lamps that I don't know. I forget what they were, 14 feet high or so.
Yeah, so you just get some downlights on the back of the building.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you have, I'm assuming you're gonna have entry doors at the back of those units, right? For the commercial.
Yeah, there'll be an entry in the back, in the
Yep.
front, and on the sides. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm just, my questions again are just to, minimize the nuisance to the neighbor in that house on the left there, because it is pretty close to the property line. But as long as they're downlights, I don't see an issue, and then you don't have anything for general lighting other than that parking lot light, which is over near the dumpster. It doesn't
Correct.
look like there's anything in the front or on that left side, just a few
Nope.
downlights. Other than that, I mean, obviously the checklist stuff for the review engineer, and then as long as conservation's happy, fire department, police department,
Yeah.
you
We
guys
have a meeting next Wednesday with conservation.
Yep, and the water commission, you've already worked out fees and that kind of stuff with them?
Haven't done that yet, but
Yeah, I mean, basically, as long as the checklist stuff is addressed, some of those questions I had, I mean, I don't have anything else that I'm overly concerned with.
Okay, Mr.
Hey, this is,
Hey,
this,
hey, Noreen,
through the chair,
no,
this is,
Noreen,
this
can you
is-
hold on? Can you hold
Yeah.
1 second, please?
Sure.
Before, okay, so, Mr. Chairman, obviously, we'll be looking to have this hearing continued.
Yeah.
Would, in light of Mr. Buckley's comment, would it be appropriate to see if Attorney Winter would be available to be at the next meeting, if that's, or whatever meeting we're looking to be continued to?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I wish he was available this evening. We could have taken care of this. But yeah, why don't we try to get him here for the next meeting?
I mean, I certainly think it would be helpful to have Brian here, and I think we could probably hash this out to a point that I think we'd all be comfortable with. I do want to call on Noreen O'Toole in a moment, if I may, Mr. Chairman, but I was remiss in not asking you at the start of the meeting. I know you're a 3-person board. Who is sitting as the alternate for tonight's meeting?
Josh Prouty.
Okay, thank you. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call upon Noreen O'Toole, who has, interestingly enough, some experience with this bylaw. But if I may, Noreen?
hi, just to introduce myself, Noreen O'Toole, municipal planner for over 30 years. And believe it or not, I spent 20 years of my planning working for the town of Hanson. So in 1998, I was the planner when the flexible overlay, I called it the flexible overlay district bylaw, went to the town meeting. And I just wanted to, it's not going to be long, just reiterate why the planning board and the ZBA looked at this. At that time in the 90s, the area where the commuter rail was almost in a blighted situation. And we wanted to do something to almost give it a facelift in that area. So we worked on this bylaw for about a year. And what we did is we first went to the dimensional table, and we knew that it was in a business district, and we didn't want to just copy what the dimensions were at that time for the business, because this was a flex zone. So what we did is we looked at the business district at the time, and that was a 44,000 square foot district. So we decided that 35,000 square feet would make it more flexible for people to come in and do something a little different. But the intent of this bylaw was really mixed use development, to present something to the development community that they could come in and they could develop a situation where we would be able to enhance our business base being a small town that didn't have a lot of business at the time. But yet what we could do is we could offer apartments to people that perhaps wanted to move into the town that were professionals that would be taking the train, the commuter rail into Boston. So we worked on that table, and we decided that you just couldn't come in and build 300 units on a lot. And the only way that we could attach this to any sort of regulation was to look at the table of dimensional requirements, that we could use the maximum percent the building coverage, and we could also use the maximum total gross coverage, so that everything, it could be attached to some sort of requirement. We put it under a special permit. And as Barry alluded to earlier, if a development came in and it appeared that they were just, an excess number of units, then that's when the negotiation part could happen between the town and the developer. There was never an intent that anyone would have to meet the statutory requirement of a variance. It would be under the special permit, in which the town would have a lot of power to look at all the items, even if they wanted to reduce, say, parking, but they wanted more landscaping, just a give and a take. And that's what we did in those areas. And it was initially, to invite people to invest in our town, in our small town. And what ended up happening is this bylaw was not used in those years, but what happened in that area is people started fixing up their buildings, because it was becoming apparent that the town, wanted to get out there and help the businesses. So we had some new buildings built in that time. And as a matter of fact, one of our buildings at that time, land planning was there. The building beside it renovated, and it was a domino effect. And that's what our intention was. And no one had used it while I was, the flexible as far as coming in to do a mixed use development. But I think now you're seeing that in a lot of towns, and it's working out very well, because in order to enhance the economy, we not only need the retail, but we need the people. We need the people, we need the apartments, we need the people to spend their money in the town. And, I live in Whitman, the abutting town. I love Hanson. And I think that this was an uplift for the area. And that was really our intention, the planning board and the ZBA, in those times. That's what it was intended for. And, if anyone has any questions, and then everybody's not angry at me because of how it was written, I'm here to answer questions.
No. So I'm certainly not angry. I can tell you as a board, one of our biggest objectives is to see that entire area developed and redeveloped, the way the town and us, the board, would love this, would like it to be. So that's definitely not, our position. Our position is just to make sure we do this right. And do it right, so we don't run into situations in the future that we regret we did it differently in the past. So I just want to make sure we dot all our I's, cross our T's. And so back then, obviously the wellheads were where the wellheads were. What were your ideas when you had a project of this magnitude to come in? How are you gonna get a mixed use project like this if it was in, say, primarily most of that area down there is in the zone 2?
Right. What ended up happening when I came to the town was not protecting its well supply at all. You didn't have any provisions in place. As a matter of fact, what ended up happening is the water commissioners came to me and asked me, we need to protect our wells and our supplies, and do you have any ideas? So what I did is I went to DEP. Okay, and I went to DEP and I worked with them. It took us about 6 months, and I worked with the water commissioners, the board of selectmen, the ZBA. I had an aquifer protection bylaw committee. There were about 15 of us, and we were guided by DEP to protect the water supply. you know, of course, zone 1 is the well, zone 2 is the water that goes towards the well, and then you got the 2A, then you got the 3B. So what we try to do is, you know, take the uses that really wouldn't work, you know, and not have them on top of our well. But DEP gave us, and we do have our aquifer, you know, well map. You still have the aquifer protection map. And it is, and that was an issue because a lot of the areas were in the zone 2. But what ended up happening is DEP kind of guided us in how we could protect it. And we protected it through like not putting like, say, gasoline uses there. You know, you couldn't put certain things in that area that might, if there was an accident, cause pollution. So we set up that table for the aquifer protection in order to be able to do that. Because that was an issue when we first started doing the overlay. That was definitely an issue, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And also, I just wanted to say one other thing about this. When we had talked about it, we felt like the ZBA, because we had a ZBA member on the committee at that time, that the ZBA had the tools through the special permit to make a decision in this district, because they had the negotiating power through that special permit, that they could add particular conditions to it if they felt that it was necessary. And that's why we felt that the special permit was important in that particular overlay district.
Understood. All right. So any other comments? I think we have, what, June 22nd? At 7:30 is our next available.
The June 8th meeting is not available, Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me?
The June 8th meeting is not available?
We already booked that evening for that meeting.
You did, okay.
So our next one is the 22nd.
All right. And I guess the only, I mean, I'm happy to reach out to Attorney Winter if you want me to see, confirm if he's available that evening, if he knows, unless you want Ms. Costley to reach out to him, but I'm happy to do so if you'd like.
Yes. So I'll have Virginia shoot him an email tomorrow morning. I'll also follow up. And again, you have a dialogue with him, so you're more than welcome to
right.
Yeah, but I mean, it's gonna be via Zoom.
Right.
So it might be a little bit easier for him if he does have a prior engagement to try to work things and make them work. So
right. I think it's just a question of whether his son has a baseball game.
Yeah, I hear you.
Did you say 7:30 that evening, Mr. Chairman?
I did.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put a motion on the floor to continue 965, 999. Yeah, Main Street to June 22nd at 7:30 p.m. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second that, Billy. This is Kevin.
All right. Any discussion? All right. So no discussion? All right. All those in favor? Sean Buckley? Kevin Perkins? Kevin Perkins?
I'm an aye, Billy.
And I'm an aye. All right. Motion moves. Meeting continued to June 22nd at 7:30 p.m.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you on the 22nd. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
We make a motion to close, Bill?
Did Billy leave without closing?
I'll make a motion to close.
I'll second it.
All in favor, Sean?
Aye.
Josh?
Aye.
And I'm an aye also. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.